So Ben, how did you get into astrology?
I got into astrology when a high school friend who sat in front of me in Latin class turned around one day and said, I just read this astrology book on how to do charts. I'd like to do your chart. Can you get your birth time? I got my birth time from my father, and he did my chart, and I was fascinated. I got into astrology more seriously after I'd been living in Hindu ashrams for a number of years, and was already working with correlating data from Hinduism and other sources into a master kind of diagram for how things work in the universe and beyond. And I was applying that to astrology, and as I applied it more and more to astrology, I said, I'm going to really want to do astrology. And that was 1980.
Cool. Hold on.
Guys, can you stop shuffling papers now?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right. So how has astrology impacted your life, both personally and as a career?
Personally, extremely profoundly. As a career, I've been involved off and on in terms of dealing with it to make my money. I live in a particular area where it's famous for when a professional astrologer moves there, they find that it's tougher going than it was in other places. But it's always a passion for me. I always keep up with the literature and keep up with the things that interest me most about astrology.
So where are you living now?
I live in a suburb of Nashville, Tennessee.
Do you find it difficult being an astrologer in the South?
I don't know about the South in general. I hear, it's easier saying Atlanta than in Nashville. Where I am, it is.
So how would you define astrology to a person on the street?
The correspondence of the macrocosm to the microcosm. The course that God, goddess, if you will, has or have given us to take for this lifetime, things we're supposed to meet, things we're supposed to go through, lessons we're supposed to take.
What's your favorite, quote, aspect of astrology in terms of like what fascinates you most about it that you would like to convey?
I think that what fascinates me most about astrology is that it really is the bridge between mysticism and science. We have the situation for a number of years now with the Goklan research findings giving skeptics fits. I talked with a skeptic on an internet chat situation for a considerable period of time, and at one point I said, well, what about the Goklan data? It really is an effect that you can't deny. And they said, well, but it's a weak effect. So really, astrology, I think, is going to be our real wedge of the mysticism into science, even a little bit more than things like quantum theory.
So what do you say to the skeptics that are sort of bombastic against astrology?
Well, there was another skeptic on that board that I talked to, and I said, well, if you got to heaven, and there's God and or goddess there, what would you do? Would you still be a skeptic? And he said, yeah, I wouldn't be sure that was heaven. I wouldn't be sure that was all really happening. So sometimes there's not much you can say.
Yeah. What is your focus in astrology? They have all these different kinds of astrologers: Hellenistic, Vedic, evolutionary. Do you have a particular focus?
I call mine eclectic esoteric, having kind of a hyper-mystical bent. I'm born on the Aquarian cusp of Pisces, my son. I got into astrology, like I said, top-down from yogic mysticism. I worked with reading about Edgar Cayce, Alice Bailey, many other esoteric sources, and I've compiled them quite a bit. I've worked with developing new techniques based on them, and so I feel like as an esoteric astrologer, I have something even to offer to the esoteric community of this eclecticism that I have.
Right. What kind of techniques do you use in working with clients, and how do you prepare for a session?
Okay, I prepare for a session. Let me change the screen here. I like to show them what all I might be choosing to use. I do not actually prepare other than setting the charts up before the session. I work with an array of techniques from my esoteric work that is going to apply either weakly or strongly. So I need to go in with the person from the beginning and go, okay, what's your problem? Or what is your interest? And okay, look through these things quickly. One program I have 7 windows open. Okay, did it start in 1973 or did it start in 1984? And they'll go, how'd you know it started in 1984? Well, it's this cycle here. So this is the strong one there. So I'm able to home in, and with my laptop computer and all the techniques already up there, I'm able to do a lot less preparation time than I otherwise would have. The downside maybe for the customer is that the customer has to be there for the entire preparation process. I've done 6-hour, 8-hour, 9-hour readings.
Can you talk about the role of cycles in doing astrological prediction, not as predicting exact events, but describing qualities of time to give people free will to choose their destiny?
Well, that has everything to do with this being God and or Goddess's course for your lifetime. You want to go through a cycle of experience. The way you react to it is your free will. The things that you meet. I think Edgar Cayce talked about this, that there are things that you're supposed to meet in the lifetime, and the way you react to them is you're treating them as either stumbling blocks or stepping stones.
Could you say something to the new astrologer who's just, hung out their shingle and they're kind of nervous about doing readings for the first time? How do you get over that nervousness?
Well, because I have to rely on my intuition so much in a reading, I'm pretty much always nervous, ever since 1980. I do have Moon in the first house, which makes for a kind of nervous temperament. It's in Gemini too, so I'm pretty nervous. I'm not one to tell people how not to be nervous.
Okay. What do you do for yourself?
Well, I just try to be spiritually centered. That is.
Take some deep breaths.
Well, physical things are there, but emotional and just being right with myself.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the astrological community that you see at like conferences and everything like that?
Oh, I've always loved it. It's like coming home. The community interaction is one of the big things for a conference for me. Just absolutely love it.
When I met you at a conference. Which one was that?
That was AFA conference in 2003.
Oh yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then we met again at another conference.
Well, one of the ESAR conferences.
Oh yeah, in Anaheim.
And also at the Blast.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was surprised showing you when you showed up at the Blast. Do you have any favorite charts of famous people that you like, and why? Like interesting configurations in the chart that might go, wow.
I love looking at avatars and gurus a lot. I am fascinated that there is even considered to be a chart for Krishna 5,000 years ago, for instance.
Yeah. A lot of people, even me in my book, I dreamed after 7 years the chart of Christ, So I look at charts of gurus too.
There are lots and lots of theoretical charts from Jesus Christ.
Do you do any writing, and if so, what inspires you to write? And is your writing astrological or mystical?
I wrote an article that I showed to Stephen Arroyo in 1984, and he said that it would be good for a theosophical publication. And I thought really ultimately that I wouldn't even do that because then it would not be in an arena for astrological focus. Eventually I do want to write more, and I do want to center on some of the techniques that I've come up with.
What are some of those techniques?
Well, for instance, I not only use the famous tropical zodiac, which is mostly used by the Western astrologers, and the famous sidereal zodiac, which is mostly used by the Hindu Vedic astrologers. I start the sidereal zodiac in 3 different places, and I also use the zodiac starting at one's birth sun, birth moon, and birth ascendant. So I really use 7 zodiacs. I use them all like zodiacs, and they work at different levels of one's personality and being.
It's pretty advanced using 7. How do you keep all that in your head?
It's why I have to have so much on the screen when I started reading.
Oh, okay, I see. What could you say about the basics? You know, the planets, signs, houses, maybe even the aspects, to inspire someone that doesn't know anything. They just got their sun sign. They've been doing sun signs for a long time, looking at the horoscopes in the newspapers. They just got their chart off the internet. They're looking at it and going, "How do I put all this together?"
Yeah, well, that doesn't happen instantly. But one thing that I like to do is show people how the 12 signs, Aries through Pisces, work very nicely with 3 different breakdowns that we do with the signs, where we have the straightforward and the subtle signs, known as the positive or negative signs. We have the cardinal, fixed and mutable. Cardinal is the more active. Fixed is the more stolid, and mutable is the exchanging. We have the earth, water, fire, and air. Earth is on the physical level. Water is on the emotional level. Fire is on the level of attention, and air is on the level of memory and stored experience. And so you kind of can go through the signs quickly with people. You can say Aries is straightforwardly giving attention to the environment so that can keep the ego and identity afloat. The Taurus is subtly holding material assets. You can go through, like Leo is aggressively or straightforwardly holding and trying to grab attention, trying to be the center of the stage. You can go through all the signs with that formula, and you get, okay, well, we're working out those 3 elements in there, and it tells you things about the signs that are very core and key.
And when a person's planets are dropped into that matrix, what happens?
Well, it creates quite the dynamic, doesn't it?
I haven't asked anybody about the Sabian symbols yet.
Oh,
could you elaborate on what the Sabian symbols
Yes,
are, and what degree symbolism is in general?
Okay, degree symbolism is a process whereby a psychic astrologer, others who don't consider themselves psychics evenly, either just trying to work with every 360th of the zodiac, or 360 degrees in the zodiac, and getting a symbol or a descriptive concept for each one of the degrees. And the Sabian symbols, which you have referred to, are the most famous set of such symbols. And they were derived by a psychic named Elsie Wheeler in collaboration with the famous astrologer Mark Edmund Jones. They were in a relaxed setting, a public park, and he had basically like flashcards for each degree of the zodiac, and she was envisioning a symbol for each degree, and he wrote them down. And another famous astrologer, Dane Rudhyar, studied them intently and wrote about them in his groundbreaking book, Astrology of Personality, and then later in a book devoted entirely to the Sabian symbols, called An Astrological Mandala. And he somewhat reworded the symbols from the original wording in Mark Jones' book about the Sabian symbols.
So how do you use them in practical application?
Oh, they come out quite a bit. I actually have on this program here, Solar Fire, keyed in various sets of degree symbols, the Sabians and other degree symbols, and sets of interpretations of them. And when I have a chart, I'm able to click on that chart point and pull up the symbols and interpretations. And it just adds depth and specificity to reading, if you're intuitive enough to really kind of launch into it. Sometimes it just stares you in the face and you don't have to be.
It's kind of cool. It has a poetic, metaphorical flow to the chart.
As astrology does in general.
Mm-hmm. So could you say that just one more time for the camera, that you look at a planet and you
look at a planet or other chart point, and I click on it, and then I have this little little screen that comes up, and it tells me the degree symbol and some other information related to the degree symbol, some interpretation.
So like an image to meditate on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a computer with a click honorable, what do you do?
You pull out the book.
Spiritual path. Astrology seems to indicate that there's some sort of infinite intelligence, or I don't know if we'll call it infinite, but some kind of intelligence in the universe that's subtly cramming archetypes into life forms. And do you have any kind of religious or spiritual path stemming from your astrology, and how do you approach that faith based on it?
Well, as I said earlier, my yogic background brought me into the astrology, and I have maintained that. Yogis traditionally understand that one of the possibilities in yogic attainment is to expand one's consciousness into the entire universe and be in touch consciously with at least something all over the universe. I believe that that really happens, and I believe that ultimately that connection is always with us, even if we're not aware of it, and that has everything to do with why astrology works. It may or may not have anything to do with why scientists would say that it does or doesn't work, because it may be on a more internal level than could actually be dealt with the instruments we have to measure these things at this time.
So how do you think astrology works?
Well, I think it's a mystical process. I really do. I mean, certainly there are things that we have, such as the tides of the moon, but I think that it ultimately works on deeper levels as well, that it layers.
Level that we're not even capable of measuring yet?
Yes.
So, what kind of cosmology has emerged in your life because of astrology?
Okay. I can show on this screen here the diagram I mentioned earlier, and it will graphically show my cosmology.
That's cool. Most people don't have a graphic interpretation of their...
Graphic interpretation of my cosmology.
Let me zoom in on it. Wow.
Okay.
So can you
The
say something about
the
it?
cohort channels that it is translatable from the Sanskrit Dharma Murti, that is the form of the essential organization of our core. And this would be true of any living entity, all the way up to the Godhead and down to whatever smallest entity exists. That we have basically material, spiritual, and transitional elements in our being. As you can probably imagine, there are a million things I could say about this chart.
Yeah, you could do a whole year or 10 years of courses on that, huh?
Mm-hmm. I used to give seminar tours that included discussion of this as well as astrology.
What's the main focus of inspiration that comes from this diagram, and how does it affect your life in a sort of practical way?
Well, I was always, as I was growing up, feeling out of place with not having a feeling of complete big picture type knowledge. I had North Node in the ninth house. And so I had to go through lots of lessons and learning to get there. And this chart really is a symbol to me of me having gotten there to where I finally feel comfortable about what I understand about life.
I think some people need more like, a picture of a saint on the wall, and others need like the Jnana yogi.
Well, it's interesting because there is a musical album by the progressive rock group Yes called Big Generator. And the title track actually is describing what I think this is. That this swath here is God. This swath here is Goddess. Now, I've explained how this pattern exists within each of us, but it also differentiates into the elements of reality that are interacting. This swath here in azure represents God. This swath in gold represents goddess. This burgundy line here is actually representing a swath here and also another swath down here. This is its generating point. This is a big generator where the love of God and goddess produces this line here. This is called the golden thread. In Sanskrit, the word is sutratma, or the thread, literally, sutra means thread, of souls or spirits. These are the individual souls that we are, existing at various levels of focus within the interplay of the love of God and goddess.
And then what happens over there on the left? People pop into bodies?
This is our spiritual realm. This is our material realm and transitional realm.
See?
Wow.
Good scene for the film.
Mm-hmm.
While you're talking about spirituality and all that, there's a whole section on cosmology. Is there anything I should ask you that I don't know to ask you? Not knowing your whole life, you know, what your passions are in life, and
Wow.
it's kind of a bizarre question. Is there anything I should ask you that I don't know to ask you? Would you say someone who's just discovered astrology and wants to go further into it? The journey.
I would say that something to say to an astrologer who's new to the subject is look on the internet a lot first for the different kinds of literature available on the subject before you just buy the first couple of books you see in a bookstore. Even if those books seem to be good books. And talk to astrologers who would recommend particular books. There are certain books that are kind of hard to find at bookstores and libraries that are some of the best. Some of them are out of print but are easily obtainable. I don't think there are many astrologers who have a lot of knowledge about the subject who wouldn't be able to help you out in this regard.
And what would you say about aspects to someone who doesn't know anything?
Well, aspects are great because they're one of the things that smack you in the face with their validity. It's one of the things that you can look up in a cookbook really quickly and easily.
What are they?
Aspects are the angular relationships between chart points, and there are certain angular relationships which make things run smoothly, and some that make things run roughly. And for good reasons, ultimately, for that course we take in life. Some things we're supposed to run up to as a challenge, and some other things are kind of there for us as a breather.
Yeah, because if everything's challenging the whole time, it just sort of...
You just wear out.
Yeah, you wear out and defeated spirits. There's a lot of people with defeated spirits these days. How can astrology help the defeated spirit?
Well, astrology shows that everybody is somebody, that there's room for everybody, that the differences we have are there for a reason. And it encourages a person to be oneself and not try to be someone else. I also feel that astrology really goes in a hand in glove with reincarnation. If we understand that we got this course in life based on our prior courses in life, and that as we pass the tests in this course in life, and hopefully don't flunk the course, that we'll have a really excellent course next time. And sometimes the challenges are awesomely heavy in this lifetime, and if we understand that's temporary and how I react to them has everything to do with what happens after, then I think that helps.
What would you say about astrology and reincarnation to the uninitiated who doesn't know anything?
Well, it helps us understand why God and or Goddess would put us into such apparently unequal situations. That it's not that we have this one material lifetime and that's it. That we are learning and growing and becoming fulfilled as we go along. And that perhaps you won't feel that astrology and reincarnation are necessarily hand in glove like I do, but they certainly do fit very well. I remember also Edgar Cayce saying that you can read astrology into the Bible and read it right back out from the Bible. I think that part of our free will is we don't have to believe in such things. I also do believe, however, that if we have the faith in such things on a tentative basis and then go through with a positive attitude and willingness to learn, that we'll be shown certain realizations about that very fact of reincarnation. I'm totally convinced myself.
So when you look at a chart pattern or a packed 12th or 8th house or 4th house, I mean, how does the chart show metaphors that come from other lifetimes?
Well, there are various formulas. I know in the Alice Bailey books they talk about the moon being the symbolic past, the sun being the symbolic present, and the ascendant being the symbolic future. And I've looked with likely successive lifetimes of some individuals whose sun in one lifetime became the moon in the next lifetime, and the ascendant in that first lifetime became the sun in the second lifetime, which would fit with that pattern.
It definitely seems like there's a pattern like that going on with families, you know.
I do believe there are various formulas for reincarnational astrology, that's just one of the possible ones, the past, present, future, skipping like that. And
can you say
there
something?
are some good books on the subject.
Can you say something about the theory of astrodynamics and families and how different aspects will be passed on, or different, mom will have the sun in a sign and the kid will have the rising?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I have sun on the Aquarian cusp of Pisces, the overlap of Pisces and Aquarius, but on the Pisces side. Well, I have that overlap. My wife has the Scorpio to Libra overlap, and I married into the family of the two children who are also on sign overlaps, and now our first grandchild also born on this Sagittarius Scorpio cusp. And so that's a delightful family dynamic for you. Completely makes it complex for everyone because, as Edgar Cayce said, the person on the cusp goes back and forth trying to decide which sign to be.
Wow. Anything else you'd like to add?
My guru said every person should study astrology. I think that ultimately you are your own best astrologer. And it's a lifetime of realization, just going through your own chart. You'll never know anybody else's chart you read for like you know your own. You can be an excellent mentor for other people. And I prefer teaching a person astrology while I'm giving them a reading to just giving them a reading.
Cool.